Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem just walked out of House hearing after Democrats put on devastating cross-examination, and sources suggest this humiliating retreat reveals someone who can't defend their own policies under scrutiny. We're not talking about routine congressional testimony or minor disagreements over procedure.
Madam Secretary, how many United States military veterans have you deported?
Using DHS resources to target members of Congress is an abuse of power.
If your department deports anyone with an ongoing asylum application, you are violating the law. I'm not asking about Joe Biden. I'm asking you a specific question.
You would have heard me if you stopped talking and listened to my question.
We're talking about reports that Noem was cross-examined about deporting combat veterans who took bullets for America, about detaining U.S. citizens despite claims otherwise, about violating federal court orders while claiming total compliance. That Democratic Congressmember Seth Magaziner brought Purple Heart recipient onto Zoom, who was shot twice serving in Panama, then deported to Korea, country he hadn't lived in since age 7. That Magaziner brought Navy Gulf War veteran whose wife has been imprisoned for 4 months over $80 bad check from decade ago. And what might make this moment so significant is Noem's response. When questioning got too tough, when evidence of her lies piled up, when she couldn't explain deporting veterans or imprisoning citizens, sources suggest she claimed she had other commitments and walked out while crowd heckled her departure. When Cabinet Secretary can't defend policies under basic congressional oversight, that's not strength. That could be admission through retreat that everything critics say about lawless DHS operation might be true. But before we break down most devastating moments of cross-examination and why Noem's walkout represents collapse of credibility, real quick.
Madam Secretary, we are joined on Zoom by a gentleman named Se-Jun Park. He is a United States Army combat veteran who was shot twice while serving our country in Panama in 1989.
You cannot trust mainstream media to explain how methodically Democrats exposed Noem's lies about not detaining citizens, not deporting veterans, and following court orders. That's why we built John Brown's show, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want analysis that actually shows how congressional oversight works when done effectively, and why Noem fleeing hearings suggests she knows her operation is indefensible, hit that subscribe button right now. All right, let's get into what happened during this hearing and why sources suggest it represents one of most effective congressional cross-examinations in recent memory. Because think about what Noem claimed repeatedly, that DHS only targets worst criminals, that they've never detained or deported U.S. citizens, that they follow all federal court orders. Those were her talking points repeated constantly to justify aggressive enforcement operations. But when Democrats brought actual evidence, actual human beings affected by her policies, actual documentation of court order violations, those talking points collapsed. Reports indicate Magaziner brought combat veteran deported despite Purple Heart. He brought Navy veteran whose wife imprisoned for months over minor offense. Other Democrats presented data showing nearly 75,000 people with no criminal records arrested, over 170 citizens detained. When confronted with evidence contradicting every claim she made, Noem couldn't defend herself. She deflected, she talked over questioners, she blamed Biden administration. And when pressure became too intense, sources suggest she literally walked out claiming she had FEMA meeting to attend. That's not what innocent person does. That might be what someone does when they know they're caught lying and can't explain their way out. Let's start with Magaziner's questioning because sources suggest it was masterclass in how to conduct effective cross-examination. He began by asking Noem how many U.S. military veterans she's deported. She claimed they haven't deported citizens or military veterans. Then Magaziner revealed he had Purple Heart recipient Se-Jun Park joining on Zoom. Park served in U.S. Army, was shot twice in Panama in 1989 defending America. Like many veterans, he struggled with PTSD and substance abuse after service. Had minor drug arrests in 1990s, nothing serious, never hurt anyone besides himself. Been clean and sober for 14 years. Think about what Noem did to this man. Sources suggest earlier this year DHS deported him to Korea, country he hasn't lived in since he was 7 years old. This is combat veteran who took 2 bullets for America. Purple Heart recipient who sacrificed more than most people ever will. And Noem's response when asked to thank him for his service, reports indicate she said she's grateful for everyone who serves and follows laws. That's not thanking veteran, that's justifying deporting him. When pressed whether she would look at his case to find pathway back to country he sacrificed for, she said she'd look at it but immediately started deflecting. And their second veteran case that might be even more devastating. Magaziner had Navy Gulf War combat veteran Jim Brown stand up in hearing room. Brown served country in Gulf War. He's married to a woman named Donna who came to United States legally from Ireland when she was 11 years old. She's lived here for 48 years. Sources suggest because of Noem's policies, Brown's wife has been in prison for last 4 months. She didn't come here illegally. She's never committed any crime other than writing 2 bad checks totaling $80 10 years ago. And she's currently imprisoned facing deportation. Think about cruelty of that. Reports indicate combat veteran who served in Gulf War has to watch his wife of decades get imprisoned and face deportation over $80 bad check from 10 years ago, while Noem claims DHS only targets worst criminals. When asked to thank Brown for his service and explain what possible justification exists for locking up his wife for 4 months, Noem thanked him, but claimed it's not her job to pick and choose which laws get enforced. Sources suggest when told she has broad discretion as secretary to issue humanitarian parole and review cases, she said she'd review it, but showed zero empathy or recognition that imprisoning veteran's wife over $80 might be insane abuse of power. But let's examine how other Democrats systematically expose Noem's lies about not detaining U.S. citizens, because sources suggest this was equally devastating. Congresswoman Ramirez presented ProPublica article from October showing more than 170 U.S. citizens have been held by immigration agents, kicked, dragged, and detained for days. When Noem smiled during this testimony, Ramirez called her out, saying, "There's nothing to smile about regarding U.S. citizens being detained." Sources suggest Ramirez then presented NBC News data showing ICE has arrested nearly 75,000 people with no criminal records, despite Noem's repeated claims they only target violent criminals. Think about what that evidence proves. Reports indicate everything Noem says publicly about targeting worse criminals is lie. Data shows they're arresting tens of thousands with no criminal records. They're detaining over 170 citizens. They're imprisoning combat veteran's wife over $80 bad check. When Ramirez accused Noem of lying to American people and lying to committee on record, sources suggest Noem had no effective response. She just kept repeating same talking points that had already been proven false by evidence presented. And there's asylum law violations. Democratic Congress member Dan Goldman conducted systematic questioning about whether asylum is lawful pathway. Noem admitted it is. Goldman established that immigrants with ongoing asylum applications are legally in country. Sources suggest then Goldman asked critical question, if DHS deports anyone with ongoing asylum application, they're violating law, correct? Noem refused to answer directly. She kept deflecting to blaming Biden administration. Reports indicate Goldman had to reclaim his time multiple times because Noem wouldn't answer whether deporting people with lawful asylum applications violates law. Her refusal to answer might be admission that yes, they're violating law systematically and she knows it. Share this video with everyone you know because there's court order violations. Multiple Democrats presented evidence that Noem personally made decision to continue deportation flights to El Salvador mega prison after federal judge ordered them stopped. Sources suggest when asked directly whether she violated court orders, Noem claimed DHS follows all federal court orders always, but then admitted she'll continue doing what she thinks is right no matter what radical judge tries to stop them. Reports indicate that's explicit admission of court order defiance. You can't claim you follow all court orders while simultaneously saying you'll ignore radical judges. That's contradiction proving you're violating judicial orders. But here's where it gets really telling. After devastating cross-examination from multiple Democrats systematically exposing her lies, sources suggest Noem announced she had to leave hearing early because FEMA Review Council was giving report she needed to co-chair. Think about timing of that. Reports indicate just as Democrats were building comprehensive case showing she deports veterans, detains citizens, arrests people with no criminal records, and violates court orders, She suddenly remembered she had other commitment and had to leave. And there's how she was received. As Noem walked out, sources suggest crowd in hearing room heckled her. People shouted at her as she departed. Reports indicate one congresswoman said she's just going to assume Noem is scared of her questions. That visual of cabinet secretary fleeing congressional oversight while being heckled by crowd might be one of most damaging moments of entire Trump administration. It shows someone who can't defend their policies, can't answer for their actions, and has to literally run away when confronted with evidence of wrongdoing. Think about what message that sends. Sources suggest if Noem's policies were defensible, if her claims about only targeting criminals were true, if she really followed all court orders, she would stay and defend herself. Reports indicate fact that she fled when questioning got tough suggests she knows everything Democrats presented is true. She knows she's deporting veterans. She knows she's detaining citizens. She knows she's violating court orders. And when forced to answer for those actions under oath with evidence presented, she couldn't do it, so she ran. Share this with everyone because there's what this reveals about DHS operation. When you can't explain why you deported Purple Heart recipient, when you can't justify imprisoning veteran's wife over $80, when you can't answer whether deporting asylum seekers violates law, when you have to flee hearing rather than defend yourself, sources suggest that proves operation is indefensible. Reports indicate it's not about enforcing law or protecting Americans. It might be about cruelty, about terrorizing immigrant communities, about violating constitutional rights systematically while lying about it publicly. But let's talk about what Noem apparently has time for, even while being too busy to remain at congressional hearing, because sources suggest this reveals her actual priorities. Reports indicate DHS has been making propaganda videos showing Border Patrol agents and ICE attacking migrants. They called one series Cuffing Season, using pop music without permission. When singer Sabrina Carpenter called them out saying, "Don't steal my music to attack migrants," Trump administration attacked her. But Carpenter's response got 138 million views, forcing regime to take down video because they were humiliated by pop star. Think about what that shows. Sources suggest Noem claims she's too busy for congressional oversight, too busy to answer questions about deporting veterans and detaining citizens, but she has time to make propaganda videos glorifying attacks on migrants. Reports indicate she has time for publicity stunts, but not time for constitutional accountability to Congress. That's not someone focused on security or law enforcement. That might be someone focused on spectacle and cruelty while avoiding scrutiny of actual policies. Make sure you're subscribed to John Brown Show because there's broader pattern. This hearing wasn't isolated incident. Sources suggest it's part of systematic effort by Democrats to expose lawlessness of Trump administration immigration enforcement. When you bring actual human beings affected by policies, when you present hard data contradicting official claims, when you force officials to answer specific questions under oath, the lies collapse. Reports indicate that's what happened to Noem. She came in with talking points about targeting criminals and following law. She left in humiliation after being exposed as someone who deports heroes, imprisons innocent people, and violates court orders while lying about all of it. So here's what Noem's walkout reveals. She was cross-examined about deporting Purple Heart recipient shot twice defending America to country he left at age 7. About imprisoning Navy veteran's wife for 4 months over $80 bad check from decade ago. About data showing nearly 75,000 arrests of people with no criminal records despite claims of only targeting criminals. About over 170 U.S. citizens detained despite claims this never happens. About personally ordering deportation flights to continue after federal judge ordered them stopped while claiming total court compliance. Sources suggest when confronted with this evidence, when forced to answer under oath, when human beings she harmed were present in room or on Zoom, Noem couldn't defend herself. She deflected, she blamed Biden, she talked over questioners. And when pressure became unbearable, she fled claiming other commitments while crowd heckled her departure. Question is whether this moment of humiliation forces any accountability or whether administration continues operating lawlessly, knowing congressional oversight has no real enforcement power, when cabinet secretaries can simply walk out rather than answer for their crimes against veterans, citizens, and asylum seekers they're systematically terrorizing. Stay tuned.